They always say space is silent, but the first time I heard it scream, I stopped believing in peace. I was drifting above the edge of the solar system, where the sun's warmth gives up and the dark starts to feel eternal. My name's Elias Vorn, Sergeant, Earthborn, 3rd Recon. Or at least, that's what it said on my dog tag's back when dog tags still mattered. These days, all that matters is keeping your boots warm and your rifle cold. Out here, in the void past Pluto, we were supposed to be listening, monitoring, watching for nothing. And for years, that's exactly what we got. Just the long hum of empty space, the cold pings of rocks tumbling past, and the occasional lonely whisper of forgotten satellites coughing out their dying beeps. But then came it, the black signal. It hit me like a punch to the soul, sharp, wrong, and ancient. I was alone in the listening post. Post Theta 7, orbiting a frozen asteroid barely big enough to name. It was 3 a.m. ship time, and I was halfway through reheating synth stew when the signal tore through the speakers. Not a distress call, not a language. It was music. Music made by something that didn't have ears. No rhythm, no melody, just a long, digital scream layered with fractured tones, like a symphony played backward through teeth. I dropped the bowl. I remember just standing there, staring at the waveforms dancing across the monitor. My instincts were already screaming before my brain caught up. This wasn't natural. This wasn't a glitch. This was a message. But here's the part that really chilled me. It was encoded, not just any encryption, something familiar. Terran, buried in the static, I found an old military cipher, one we hadn't used in over a century. It shouldn't have been possible, but there it was, clear as death. So I did what soldiers do when things go sideways. I called it in. Command, this is Theta 7. I've got an unscheduled signal pinging past Pluto. Encrypted, Class B military code. It's old, real old. Requesting immediate analysis. Silence, then static. Then, finally, a voice I hadn't heard in years crackled through. Admiral Reyes herself. Vorn, confirm the encryption key. I blinked. She knew. Somehow she already knew. Key confirms. Delta 9. Obsidian, blackout. A long pause. No one breathed. Then her voice came back. Low, clipped, surgical. The kind of voice you only use when the world's already ending. Get to the Wraith. Now, we're initiating Protocol Ember. Now, Ember wasn't just a protocol. It was a grave. Ember meant extinction-level event. No survivors. No reinforcements. Total lockdown. I didn't wait. Grabbed my helmet, slammed into the mag boots, and sprinted down the corridor toward my gunship, Wraith 9. She wasn't pretty, but she could outrun almost anything that didn't have a star for a heart. By the time I launched off the asteroid, Theta 7 was already going dark behind me. They scrubbed it, burned the whole post from orbit before anyone else could hear the signal. They weren't containing a breach. They were burying a truth. I spent the next 12 hours running silent. No comms, no beacons, just me, the hum of the reactor, and that signal playing on a loop inside my mind. And let me tell you, it wasn't stopping. You ever hear something you know you're not supposed to understand, but part of you does anyway? That's what this signal felt like it was dragging something ancient out of me, something human, something violent. I kept thinking about an old story my mother used to tell me when I was a boy, about sirens singing sailors to their deaths. I used to laugh. We don't have oceans anymore, Mom. No one's gonna drown in water. But out here, in the black, there's more than one way to drown. When I finally hit the inner system, Earth was different. They'd shut down civilian comms. All orbital traffic redirected. Even Mars looked like a ghost. No chatter, no light trails, just silence and tension thick enough to crush bone. I docked at Titan Forge, one of our last orbital shipyards still loyal to EarthGov. The place was a hive of activity, but not the usual kind. No repairs, no commerce, just war prep. Hatches slammed, cannons rotated, drones loaded warheads like they were stacking dominoes. Admiral Reyes was waiting for me on the deck, flanked by 2 Ironborn, a pair of cybernetically enhanced soldiers, eyes glowing like reactor cores. She didn't waste time. Elias, you heard the signal? Yeah, I said, throat dry. Still can't unhear it. She nodded. We've confirmed its origin. They're coming from beyond the Oort cloud. Real fast, real big. Who's coming? Her jaw clenched. The Zarn. I froze. See, The Zarn weren't just some alien boogeyman. They were the warning. The reason we built orbital guns on Europa and nuked our own atmosphere clean. We'd found traces of them centuries ago. Dead civilizations, blackened suns, hushed stories in old spacefarer bars. But no one ever confirmed a sighting. Until now, she showed me the feed. A deep space probe, caught in the gravitational drift beyond Neptune, managed to send one blurry image before going offline. A ship. No, not a ship. A creature. Planet-sized. Living metal. Tendrils of plasma trailing behind it like wings made of lightning. It wasn't flying. It was consuming. Reality bent around it like space was trying to run away. And following behind it, a fleet. Dozens of them. Hundreds. All heading straight for Sol. They're calling it an extinction cleansing, Reyes said. They've done it before. Burn a system star, melt the planets, wipe the slate clean. They don't care if you're peaceful, primitive, or pleading. And Earth? I asked. She met my eyes. No hesitation. Earth's marked for deletion. I stood there for a while, looking out the viewport, watching Saturn's rings spin like halos around a dying angel. You grow up thinking your world matters, that all the blood spilled, the wars fought, the victories carved in stone, they meant something, that you'll pass the torch on to someone else. But now, the universe was reminding us of a cruel truth. We're not special. We're not chosen. We're just next. And yet, something stirred in me then. Something primal. Not rage. Not fear. Defiance. Because while they had ships the size of moons and technology that could erase oceans with a breath, they didn't have us. They didn't have me. They hadn't faced Earth after we were broken. After we lost everything. After we bled ourselves dry and kept crawling forward anyway. We may be the underdogs, the outgunned, the damned, but we are human, and we burn brighter when the dark comes close. Some people say space is beautiful, but they've never seen it die. We saw it happen from 20 million kilometers away. Pluto, cold, distant, forgotten, used to be the kind of place you joked about in training. A rock nobody cared about except bored astronomers and mining companies running low on good press. But that day, Pluto became a warning, a bright, burning tombstone for the rest of us. The first thing that hit was the pulse, a distortion, like the universe hiccuped. My gunship Wraith 9 picked it up before I did. Sensors screamed. AI spun out warnings like confetti. But it wasn't until the visual feed came in that I understood what was happening. 1 second, Pluto was just Pluto, a frozen, quiet ball spinning alone in the dark. Then came the burn, like God had lit a match inside it. A massive, blinding lance of white-hot energy tore through it from the inside out. Not an explosion, an unmaking. Matter peeled back like petals. The crust evaporated into vapor. And then, silence. Not just audio silence. Sensor silence. No gravity. No heat. Nothing. Pluto didn't explode. It just stopped existing. I remember gripping the sides of my chair, knuckles white, mouth dry. I wasn't even close, but I felt it. Something in me recoiled, like part of the solar system's soul had just been amputated, and we all shared the nerve endings. Holy hell, muttered Lieutenant Vika over comms from a recon frigate nearby. Did they just delete a planet? No one answered, because we knew. This wasn't a warning shot. This wasn't a demonstration. This was a signature. The Zarn didn't ask questions. They didn't negotiate. They sent a message the only way monsters do, with annihilation. 3 hours later, I was on the deck of the Titan Forge, the last functioning Dreadnought-class shipyard orbiting Saturn. A floating city wrapped in steel and scars, born in the dying days of Earth's unity before everything fractured. Now, it was humanity's last iron cathedral, and it was angry. Hundreds of fighters zipped between her ribs like fireflies. Massive mechs hung from loading hooks, their frames painted in old Terran war colors, blood red, ash gray, solar gold. Maintenance drones scurried across hulls like ants rebuilding a burning house. Every bolt that was turned, every shell that was loaded, it all carried the weight of knowing Pluto had just been erased like it never existed. Admiral Reyes met me on the upper command deck. Her voice was calm, too calm. We estimate the weapon originated from their primary war form. We're calling it the Leviathan. You're sure it was alive? I asked. She looked me in the eye. It had a pulse, and it breathed. That's the thing with the Zarn. We still don't fully understand what they are. Machines? Bioconstructs? Something older? Doesn't matter. What we do know is that their ships aren't just ships. They're beings. Grown, cultivated, fed on stars and silence. No windows, no engines, just metal and mind. The Leviathan was the size of a moon. Its spine curved like a scythe. Its hull shimmered with runes we couldn't read and probably shouldn't try. And at its center, a glowing, seething furnace that once may have been a sun. The plan, Reyes told us, was simple. We stall them at Jupiter. We make them bleed. You ever try bleeding a god? We sure as hell were about to. They pulled the old fleet from retirement. The orbital junkyards around Mars churned to life, spitting out rusted cruisers and prototype ships with names like Iron Widow and Hell's Choir. Even Luna sent a few, grudgingly, after Reyes threatened to glass their hidden vaults. Me? I was put in charge of the Crucible Spear, a long-range strike wing built from refit gunships and old Corsair exofighters. Fast, mean, and expendable, just the way I like it. My squad had names like Knives, Spectre, Gutter, and Joe. Real warm people. We bled together in the Martian riots, hunted pirates out past Saturn, and once nuked an asteroid cult trying to weaponize a black hole. But this wasn't just another op. This was survival. We deployed to high orbit above Europa, a ghost moon bathed in ice and secrets. That's when the sensors started lighting up like a funeral pyre. Zarn ships, dozens, then hundreds, each one shaped different. Some like spears, others like stingrays. One looked like a twisting cathedral made of bone and stars. They weren't flying, they were swimming through space, like predators that didn't need permission from physics. And then we saw her, the Leviathan, moving slowly, proudly, as if it knew there was no rush, as if it had done this before and would do it again. Vorn, this is Titan Forge. Reyes came through my comms. Your team is green for interception. Show them what Earthborn fire looks like. I smiled, just a little. Copy that. Spear wing. Burn hard and aim stupid. We launched. 30 gunships screamed into the black, trailing afterburners and rage. The Zarn moved faster than anything I'd seen. No heat signatures, no communication, just intent. They hit us in waves. Missiles made of living metal, projectiles that screamed as they passed by, and warforms that latched onto our ships and tried to burrow inside. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. It was war. I lost Spectre and Joe in the first 30 seconds. A Zarn drone the size of a freighter latched onto Joe's canopy and just crushed it. No explosion, just a sharp, metallic crack, like a soda can folding in on itself. Gutter died screaming, laughing, and firing all 6 plasma cannons into a Leviathan spawn until both of them disintegrated together. She went out with a bang, and a middle finger aimed at the stars. Knives and I made it through the first wave and punched through the Leviathan's outer escort. That's when we saw it. The weapon, not a gun, not a missile, a seed. It was burrowing into Jupiter's magnetic field, feeding, anchoring. We didn't know what it was doing until one of the science techs back on Titan Forge made the call. They're going to ignite the gas giant. What? Knives said, voice sharp in my ear. They're going to turn Jupiter into a star, a miniature sun, a weaponized birth. We had 5 hours before ignition. We didn't wait. Knives and I went rogue. No time for strategy. No time for committees. We dove into the storm, right into Jupiter's upper atmosphere. Violent, radioactive, crushing. Lightning arced across our hulls. The pressure ripped, plating off my starboard wing. My ship screamed. I screamed louder. The seed was a massive, churning sphere of Zarn biomass fused with Terran tech. Terran tech. The bastards had stolen pieces of us. From old satellites, derelict ships, even crashed stations. They were learning, adapting. We had to kill it before it finished growing. Knives covered me. I armed the core. Nuclear. Dirty. Old school. I got in close. Real close. Close enough to see the tendrils latch onto my hull. Close enough to see it react to fear. It knew, and I smiled anyway. Vorn to Forge. Say something nice at my funeral. No funeral, Elias, Reyes said. You'll live just to spite them. I dropped the bomb and pulled up hard. The core detonated. Light filled the sky like a god snapping its fingers. The seed screamed. I swear to you. No speakers, no sound. But I heard it in my bones. It died. We lived. Barely. When we emerged above the clouds, half the fleet was gone. The forge had taken hits. Earth was calling. The system was burning. But the seed was gone. The Leviathan drifted for now. We'd bought time. Not much, but enough. And as I sat there, gasping in the silence of space, blood dripping from my nose. Suit cracked and soul rattled. I realized something. They weren't gods. They bled. And if they bled, we could kill them. War doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't wait for your wounds to close. It just keeps coming. I didn't get a hero's welcome when I limped back into orbit. No cheers, no banners, just the cold hum of static over comms and a hangar full of people too tired to mourn and too numb to care. That's the thing about surviving out here. After a while, you stop treating it like victory. You start treating it like delay. I parked Wraith 9 in docking bay 12. She was bleeding coolant. Half of her hull looked like melted wax, and I'm pretty sure one of her wings had been fused with organic Zarn tissue. She reeked of burnt ozone and blood. My blood. I took off my helmet and just sat there for a minute, maybe two, trying to catch my breath. My vision was blurry. My right arm wouldn't stop twitching. I could still hear the Leviathan's weapon echoing through my skull like distant thunder. But I was alive. And in war, alive is enough to get sent back out. Titan Forge was a fortress, but it felt like a hospice now. Lights were dimmed to conserve power. Engineers ran like ghosts through the halls. There weren't enough medics, not enough morphine, not enough time. The worst part? No one had slept. There's a certain kind of silence that settles after you watch a planet die. After you see Pluto erased and Jupiter almost lit like a candle. It's the silence of people waiting for their turn. I was walking through the main concourse. Helmet under one arm, burn lines across my armor, blood crusted in my beard. When I saw the memorial wall, it was digital, auto-updating, names in pale blue, constantly scrolling. So many that they looked like a waterfall of ghosts. Joe, Spectre, Gutter, they were already on the wall. Knives wasn't. She'd made it, burned half to hell, but alive. They'd sedated her and locked her in cryo for triumph. I told the docs she'd hate them when she woke up. One of them smiled. First smile I'd seen all day. Admiral Reyes called me to the war room. Same cold expression, same steel eyes. Only now she looked older, like she'd aged a decade in 24 hours. The room was half empty. Half of the people who should have been there were now names on that wall. She gestured to the holomap. Zarn fleets regrouping behind Saturn. They're feeding again. We think they're drawing power from the rings. Micromatter, frozen debris, doesn't matter. They'll be ready to move within 2 days. And us? I asked. She sighed. 1/3 of the fleet is gone. Shipyards crippled. Mars won't answer. Luna's demanding we evacuate Earth. Evacuate it to where? I snapped. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. There was nowhere left. She leaned forward, dropped her voice. Real quiet. There's one thing left. Something we never used. Too dangerous. Too unstable. But right now, it's all we've got. She tapped a locked file on the console. Gravemind Protocol. I frowned. I'd heard the name before. Whispers. Rumors. A failed experiment. A war machine so powerful it nearly turned on its own pilots. I thought the Gravemind was dismantled. It was. Then it wasn't. She opened the file. Schematics. Neural mesh architecture. Combat AI. Reinforced exosuit frame with an adaptive fusion core. Integrated nanoweapons. Thought-linked targeting. It's a mech that thinks faster than any human, she said. It learns. Reacts. It becomes you. I shook my head. That's not armor. That's possession. It's symbiosis, she corrected. But yeah, kind of. They built it for a war that never came. Until now. I stared at the hologram as it spun slowly in the air. The Gravemind looked like a demon out of old Earth mythology. Sharp-angled, tall, sleek. Black as midnight, with red glowing lines across its limbs like veins full of magma. It wasn't beautiful. It was predatory. Why me? She hesitated, just for a second. Because the Gravemind needs pain to work. Trauma anchors it. Fear fuels it. It won't sync with someone who's whole. I let that hang in the air. You're saying I'm broken enough. I'm saying you survived too much not to be. I won't lie. I thought about walking away. About stealing Wraith 9, aiming her at some empty part of space, and just disappearing. Becoming another ghost lost in the dark. But something stopped me. It wasn't duty, or pride, or even revenge. It was the memory of Joe, of Gutter's laugh, of Pluto turning to ash, of Earth still spinning somewhere behind all this chaos, full of people who didn't know they were about to be wiped off the map like ants under a boot. I looked back at Reyes. When do I suit up? The Gravemind core was housed in a sub-level of the forge they didn't advertise. Cold, dark, quiet. A man named Dr. Elon oversaw the project. thin, pale, jittery, like someone who'd seen too much of the future and hated every bit of it. He didn't smile when I walked in, just handed me a neural splice and started talking. The grave mind reads your thoughts, responds to instinct. No buttons, no joysticks. You think kill, it kills. You think run, it runs. You think burn, it burns. I finished. He nodded. It's going to hurt. I looked at the suit. It already does. The moment I stepped into the harness, I felt it. It wasn't a machine. It was alive. Not with a soul, no, but with something close. An echo, a hunger. It wrapped around me like liquid metal, flowed into the gaps in my armor, laced itself into my nervous system. I could feel it learning me, cataloging every scar, every trauma, every nightmare I never told anyone about. And then the voice. It wasn't a sound, more like a presence, like a memory that didn't belong to me whispering from the edge of thought. Let's fight. My vision flared red. My heartbeat synced with the suit's power cycle. The HUD danced with threat predictions I hadn't even considered. The mech moved like it had always belonged to me, like I'd been born for this. But it wasn't just power. There was weight, emotion, like the grave mind wasn't just armor. It was all the rage humanity ever buried, poured into a single vessel and chained to a dying soldier. That night, I stood alone on the exterior hull of the forge, gravemind armor locked to my bones, the stars stretching out before me like a graveyard of forgotten prayers. Jupiter spun below, still wounded. Saturn glowed in the distance, its rings dimmer now. The Zarn were coming, faster than before, stronger than ever. And here I was, one man strapped into a weapon powered by pain, daring them to keep moving forward. There's a kind of stillness you only find in war. Not peace, just the moment before the next hit. Like the universe taking a breath. That's where I was, floating, waiting, knowing, and ready. Because I may have been broken, but I wasn't done. Not yet. They say the first time you kill with your mind, something inside you changes. I say, maybe it finally wakes up. We didn't get a briefing. Not the usual kind, anyway. No mission clocks. No projections. No long-winded commanders pointing at holograms and pretending we weren't already dead. This time, they handed us a target and a timer. And that timer wasn't counting up. Our mission was simple. Board a Zarn cruiser. Steal anything that looks like a brain. Blow it up from the inside. We called it the first flame operation. Not for drama, not for style, because it was the first time we lit a fire inside them. I stood with my strike team in the launch bay of Titan Forge. All of us already half dead from exhaustion and fully ready to die just to make a dent. The lights flickered above us, red and pulsing like a heartbeat on the verge of arrest. Everyone had their war faces on, hard, focused. But me? I had something else wrapped around my bones. The grave mind. It didn't sit on me like armor. It didn't carry me like a pilot. It wore me like a promise. Every time I blinked, I could see dozens of threat vectors light up across my HUD. Lines and possibilities and choices I hadn't even considered. My mind felt sharp, too sharp, like I'd forgotten how to blink without calculating a kill. Across from me stood Commander Rika Hale, a brawler from Europa with steel arms and a grin that belonged in a bar fight, not a war. She was leading the rest of the human fire team, those who weren't wearing a demon suit like mine. She glanced at me and raised a brow. You sure that thing's not going to eat your soul mid-drop? If it does, I said, you can have my boots. She smirked. Ugly things anyway. The target was orbiting Saturn, just outside the shadow of Titan, one of the Zarn cruisers we'd been tracking for days. Big, black, living metal, no visible engines, just slow, hungry motion. It looked like a massive clawed centipede made of scorched cathedral spires and bioflesh. It wasn't flying. It was gliding, like it had grown from the void itself and forgot gravity was a thing. Our job was to punch a hole into its hide, crawl inside, and rip out whatever brain ran the thing. Easier said than done. The drop was chaos. We launched in silent pods, coffin-sized projectiles that burned cold to avoid detection. I lay inside mine, staring at the dark walls around me, counting my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Then impact. The pod hit the Zarn hull with a screech of tearing alloy. My gravemind armor synced instantly, liquefied the pod walls, and pulled me out like a bullet from a chamber. And suddenly, I was inside them. The Zarn cruiser didn't have corridors. It had arteries, organic passageways that pulsed with light and heat in a wet, mechanical rhythm. The air was humid, thick with spores and steam. The walls twitched when I touched them, like muscle flinching from a scalpel. Our boots splashed through ankle-deep fluid that smelled like ozone and blood. It was hard to tell where tech ended and biology began. There was no gravity, just pressure, and the feeling like we were being washed by something older than cruelty. We moved as a unit, silent hand signals, tight formation. My team advanced behind me, trusting that if something lunged, I'd kill it before it knew it was lunging. And the Gravemind didn't disappoint. The first attack came without warning. A cluster of Zarn drones dropped from the ceiling, long, segmented things with blade limbs and mouthless faces. They didn't scream, they just charged. Before my team even lifted their rifles, the Gravemind moved. I didn't think, I just reacted. A burst of kinetic force exploded from my arm, punching one drone backward into the wall hard enough to crack it. I spun, blades sliding from my gauntlets, and carved two more out of the air. It wasn't clean. It wasn't controlled. It was animal. By the time the others fired, I'd already painted the walls with alien blood. I stood over the corpses, panting, my heart trying to remember what a normal rhythm felt like. Jesus, Rico whispered, lowering her rifle. You didn't even blink. I didn't respond, because deep inside the Gravemind, I liked it. That scared me more than the drones ever could. We pressed deeper. The walls became weirder, more complex. We saw symbols etched into bone, carvings in dead languages. At one point we passed what looked like a shrine. Zarn tech grown into a tower of fused skulls and flickering lights. Some of the skulls were human, others weren't. We didn't stop, didn't breathe, just moved, until we found the core. It was suspended above a pit of writhing tendrils, like a brain made of crystal and static. It throbbed with every step we took, reacting to our presence. Think it knows we're here? One of the squad whispered. It knew before we were born. I muttered. The plan was simple. Plant charges, steal whatever intel we could, and run like hell. But as I stepped forward, something clicked. Not a sound, a feeling. The Gravemind responded, like it was reaching out to the Zarn tech, like it recognized it. Suddenly, my HUD glitched. A voice, not mine, not Reyes, something ancient. Sibling detected. I froze. The team yelled behind me, but I couldn't move. The Gravemind was fighting me, trying to interface with the Zarn core, like it was built from pieces of them. Or maybe they were built from pieces of us. Elias, Rika shouted, "We've got company." I turned. Too late. The walls opened. Zarn Guardians poured in, larger than before, covered in armor that shimmered like starfire. One of them roared, and the sound wasn't made with lungs. It was made with gravity. I charged. The Gravemind responded like a predator off the leash. I was faster than I'd ever been, stronger. I ducked low, slid beneath a spear arm, and rammed a plasma blade into the creature's chest. Another one grabbed me, tried to crush my ribs. I let it. Then I detonated a pulse charge from my chest plate. We went flying in opposite directions, both bleeding, though I wasn't sure what counted as my blood anymore. The fight was chaos. My squad held the line while I tore through the enemy like a red blur of rage and steel. I heard screaming. Rika! I turned just in time to see her get impaled by a drone, lifted off her feet, bleeding out. She looked at me, smiled faintly, and mouthed, "Light it up." I did. I overloaded the Gravemind's fusion core. The resulting explosion incinerated half the chamber, sent fire cascading up the walls. The core shattered, splinters of alien intelligence scattering like broken stars. The cruiser screamed, not the drones. The ship. We ran. What was left of us? Barely a handful. The Gravemind carried me, limbs half melted, suit damaged, mind stretched thin. We made it back to the pods just as the cruiser began to break apart. Internal systems failing, gravity collapsing in on itself. I hit launch, and we flew back to the forge with fire behind us. In the hangar, medics pulled my team out, screaming, dying, grateful. They couldn't get my armor off. The Gravemind had fused to my skin. Dr. Elon watched with haunted eyes. It's adapting faster than we predicted. No, I said quietly. It's awakening. Later that night, I sat alone in a med bay, still half-armored, watching my reflection in a cracked piece of glass. I didn't see a soldier. I didn't see a man. I saw something in between, and I couldn't tell if that was a good thing. But I knew this much. The first flame had been lit. And now the Tsar knew. Humanity wasn't waiting to die. We were coming to burn them down. Some battles aren't won. They're survived. And even that costs more than we can afford. You ever feel small? Not in a poetic way. Not the stargazing, lying in the grass kind of small. I mean truly small. Like you're standing on the edge of something ancient and endless. And it's looking back at you. And it doesn't even blink. That's how it felt. Dropping into Jupiter's upper atmosphere. Like falling into the lungs of a dying god. Titan Forge had tracked the Zarn's movements for 36 hours straight. What they found made every spine in the command center go stiff. The Zarn weren't retreating. They were digging in. One of their war forms, a massive construct called a celestial node, had burrowed into Jupiter's cloud layers. Not just hiding, feeding, anchoring something. We didn't know what it was, but we knew the pattern. Same as Pluto. Same as the Leviathan's attempt to ignite Jupiter the first time. This time, though, it wasn't just a seed. It was a womb. Reyes called us in. Me. What was left of Rika's strike team. A few Martian Ghost Corps volunteers who hadn't said a word in 2 days. And Gravemind still wrapped around my nervous system like a second skin, growing tighter every time I moved. We send anything larger than a gunship down there, Reyes said. The pressure will crush it. The Tsar know that. That's why they're doing it here. I leaned over the display. So we take something smaller. She looked at me. You mean you? I nodded. Me. And anyone willing to follow. We rode down in drop suits. Thin as bone. Built for speed and silence. The descent through Jupiter's upper layers was a nightmare of color and gravity. Lightning storms miles wide. Hydrogen oceans boiling just out of reach. Every second felt like the planet was trying to tear us apart molecule by molecule. And through it all, the Gravemind whispered. It didn't speak in words. Not really. More like urges. Impressions. Kill fast. Don't hesitate. Burn everything. We hit atmosphere like bullets. The pressure was crushing. Air thick like liquid metal. No GPS. No visuals. Just instinct and grit. We followed the signal buried deep below the clouds, where the celestial node pulsed like a heartbeat. When we finally broke through the cloud wall, we saw it. And God help me, I wish we hadn't. The node wasn't a ship. It was a city. A living, alien fortress built inside Jupiter's hellish sky, floating on magnetic fields, tendrils rooted into storms, drawing power from lightning, towers that looked like tusks and ribs, structures shaped like things out of dreams that wake up screaming. It throbbed, with heat, with life, with purpose, and in the center, glowing through layers of semi-translucent bone and metal, a chamber, birthing something huge. The Ghost Corps moved first, silently, efficiently, planting charges and signal disruptors to confuse the node's internal senses. Me? I moved straight for the core. The Gravemind pulled me toward it like gravity, like it wanted to see what the Zarn were making. Inside the chamber, the air shimmered. A red mist clung to the walls, and floating above a pool of dark matter, there it was, a fetal war form, incomplete, unborn, but still alive. It looked almost human, at least at first glance. Tall, 2 legs, 2 arms, but its skull was split open and humming. Its spine glowed with Zarn runes. And its hands looked like mine. My breath caught in my throat, because deep down, I recognized it, not as a person, but as a reflection, a mockery. The Zarn weren't just building weapons anymore. They were copying us, studying the Gravemind, replicating our rage, our instincts, our defiance. They were building a counterpart, something designed to destroy us, not just with strength, but with understanding. The Gravemind pulsed hot against my skin. Anger, fear, jealousy. I didn't have time to process. The chamber lit up, defense systems activating. Walls peeled back, drones dropped from above, and the node screamed. Not audio, not tech. It screamed with gravity, with pressure. My bones rattled. The air thickened. The others called out over comms, voices lost in static and chaos. And then it was just me and the warform, and the Gravemind inside me whispering, burn it all. I charged. No hesitation, no plan, just fury. The Gravemind unleashed everything. Plasma blades ignited from my forearms. Kinetic boosters kicked in, and I flew. The warform wasn't ready, still waking, but its instincts were active. It lashed out, claws spinning, eyes glowing, a roar like cracking stars. We collided midair. Metal screamed. The walls shattered. We crashed through support beams and slammed into the base of the chamber. I hit it with everything. Overclocked the suit's reactor, slammed shockwaves into its ribs, carved through flesh that hissed like steam. But it kept healing. It grabbed my arm, twisted, bones popped, pain lanced through me like liquid fire. Then the grave mind overrode it. My nerves snapped back into place. Bones reformed. It was learning faster than me, fighting harder than me, and loving it. We didn't trade blows. We traded hate. Outside, the others had triggered the charges. Explosions tore through the node's outer ring. The whole structure buckled. I looked at the war form, still regenerating, still snarling, and realized it couldn't be allowed to live, not even for one more minute. I ripped the power core from my backplate. A miniature singularity reactor. Illegal, unstable, perfect. I shoved it into the warform's chest. It looked at me, and for a moment, I swear to whatever gods still exist, it smiled. I hit the booster, launched myself upward. The grave mind screamed in my head. Warning, fear, fury, then light. The explosion hit like a newborn sun. White, blinding, endless. The node imploded. Gravity collapsed inward. The chamber folded on itself. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was floating above Jupiter, in the silence, suit offline, eyes burned, chest shattered, but alive. The forge had pulled me out. The node was gone. The war form was ash, but so was part of me. Back in the med bay, Reyes stood over me. You stopped it, she said. I shook my head. No. I delayed it. They'll come harder next time. I nodded. They'll come with us next time, because now we knew. They could copy our weapons. They could mimic our minds. But they still didn't understand why we fought. Not for conquest, not for dominance, but for each other. The Zarn birthed gods. We made monsters out of broken men. And mine had just learned to smile. Sometimes, when the universe whispers, you have to listen. But be careful. Not every voice is trying to guide you. We didn't hear the beacon at first. Not clearly. The signal was faint, broken by the radiation fields in the outer rim, corrupted by solar flares, buried beneath layers of dust and silence. But that's what we did now. We sifted through the noise, scanning the edges of space for the ones who were still calling out. They always said that deep space was a tomb, but I don't believe that anymore. Space is alive, and sometimes, when it speaks, it doesn't sound like anything you want to hear. It started as a weak signal, but the coordinates pulled us toward a planet orbiting a star long forgotten by the charts. An old colony world, nothing more than a dot on a map. An outpost from the early expansion, abandoned for decades after the fall of the First Terran Federation. Found it, Reyes said, her voice unusually flat. I've seen this place before. It's not good. I looked at the display. The planet was a lifeless brown, circling a dying star. It looked like it was holding its breath, waiting for something, waiting for us. Maybe. I didn't like the sound of "it's not good," but it wasn't her words that made my skin crawl. It was the sound that followed. A pulse, like a hum, barely audible at first, but steady, unbroken. And then, something more. Something organic. A low melodic chant. A song. It was coming from the planet's surface. The Black Choir. That's what they called it in the old reports. A group of settlers who'd gone rogue, cut off from the Terran government for years, decided to explore something forbidden. They'd uncovered something buried deep beneath the planet's crust. Something alien. Something they shouldn't have touched. The official report from the first team sent down? A mass suicide. All bodies missing, except for a few. The ones who had gone insane. The rest had turned into them. The choir. I didn't need to hear more. We were going in. The drop to the surface was quick. Too quick, maybe. The planet's atmosphere was thin, its magnetic field unstable, and the sky looked like it was suffering through a constant thunderstorm. Our ship, Harrow's Wake, cut through the turbulence, barely holding together, its shields rattling. I looked out at the planet through the viewport. The winds were so strong they made the trees on the surface writhe and twist. The storm clouds swirled with an unnatural energy, sparking with electrical discharges that flashed like ghostly fireworks. But it wasn't the storm that scared me. It was the silence underneath it. It felt like we were being watched, like the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting to exhale. We hit the ground hard. The landing was rough, the kind of jolt that rattles your bones and makes you wonder if something's broken on the inside. But we were down, and we had a job. Rika led the team out of the ship first, weapon raised, scanning the perimeter. The storm was deafening, but the air was thick with something else, something that didn't belong. Stay sharp, Rika muttered. This place feels wrong. I didn't disagree. The settlement we landed in was almost perfect in its desolation. It looked like the town had just up and died. Buildings crumbled and decayed, streets covered in overgrowth. Yet, in the center, the old calm tower, now nothing but a rusted skeleton, still stood, its signal dish reaching up into the sky like a broken limb. We moved quietly, checking every corner, every shadow. There were no bodies. Not at first, but we weren't alone. Not anymore. The sound came first, a low hum, a murmur, like the wind had found a voice and started singing. But then, it wasn't just a sound. It was everywhere. From the trees, from the buildings, from beneath the ground itself. The song, not a beautiful song, not a lullaby, a call, a desperate, pleading thing. Does anyone else hear that? One of the Ghost Corps soldiers asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Yeah, I said, I hear it. But it wasn't the first thing that sent chills down my spine. It was the movement, the flicker of shadows in the corners of my vision. Not quick, not fast, but patient, watching. And then, we saw them. They were standing at the edge of the settlement, cloaked in the shadows of the broken buildings. Tall, thin, their forms were humanoid. But they were wrong, so wrong. Their skin had this dull sheen to it, like it was made of something liquid, something unnatural. Their eyes didn't glow. They didn't reflect light. They absorbed it. The choir, the legends didn't do them justice. One of them stepped forward, and the others followed, slow, deliberate. They moved as if they weren't walking, but drifting through the air. Their limbs were too long, their faces too smooth, too featureless. They wore no clothes, no armor, but there was no mistaking them. They were alive, but they were also dead. And the song, the hum, grew louder as they came closer. I raised my rifle. Stand down, I ordered, but no one moved. No one could. The song had taken root. Inside us, in our heads, in our bones. I felt it crawl through me like a wave of sickness, crawling up my spine. Every breath felt heavier. Every heartbeat felt slower. And then the whispers began. Voices, soft at first, faint. Come join us. Become part of the song. You are not alone. They were in our heads, not speaking, not commanding, just offering, just inviting. It was Rika who snapped first. She raised her rifle and fired into the air, the sound like thunder. The shot didn't break the spell. It amplified it. The choir didn't flinch. They didn't even move. One of them, the tallest, stepped forward, tilting its head in a motion that was almost curious. Why do you fight? It whispered, its voice echoing in our minds like 1,000 distant voices. We are you. You are us. I felt my mind fracture. Something inside me screamed to run, to fight. But there was something else there now. Fascination. A pull. A connection. I wasn't alone. I wasn't broken. And that's when I realized the choir wasn't just here to convert us. They were waiting for us. They were waiting for me. The grave mind surged in my mind, pulling against the weight of the choir's influence. I didn't know how much longer I could fight it. Kill them. All of them. They are not you. They are not me. But something inside me wanted to listen to them, wanted to give in, wanted to stop fighting. Rika broke the silence. No more talking. We kill them. Now, she fired again. This time, it wasn't a warning shot. It was a statement. The battle wasn't clean. It never was. We unloaded on them. Guns fired. Explosives detonated. Everything we had. But the choir didn't die. They melted instead, flesh shifting like liquid, reforming, always coming back. It was like fighting smoke. The harder we hit, the more they reformed, the more they became. And then, suddenly, one of them lunged. Rika caught it in the chest with a full burst from her rifle. It crumpled in front of her, but she didn't pause. She wasn't stopping. We kept firing. I kept fighting. When the dust finally settled, we stood alone. The choir was gone. Not dead, not destroyed, but vanished, dissolved back into the ether like smoke in the wind. And the song? It was gone too. Just silence. We stood there, gasping, panting, staring at the ruins of the settlement. We'd won, but at what cost? I didn't know if we'd ever understand what happened here. But I did know one thing. Whatever the choir was, they weren't done with us. They weren't done with me. The truth is never just one thing. It's 100 whispers, all telling you different stories. But the truth doesn't care if you listen. It comes for you anyway. We thought we were done. We thought that when we'd left the ruins of that settlement behind, we'd be able to forget the voices, the song. But it was never that simple. It never is. The mission debrief was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that clings to your skin like dust, heavy and suffocating. We stood in a room at Titan Forge, staring at the hollow map of the ruined colony world. No one spoke for the first few minutes. The weight of what had just happened hung in the air, thick as smoke. Rika broke the silence first, her voice low but sharp, like she'd been carrying something on her chest. "What the hell was that, Elias?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine. "That wasn't just a random encounter. Those things were waiting for us. They knew we were coming." I didn't have an answer. Not the kind that would make sense. Not the kind I could say out loud. "The choir," I muttered. "That's what they're called. But I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what they are." A tense quiet fell over the room again. Everyone had their own version of what happened back there. Some were shaking their heads. Others were staring at their boots. They couldn't understand what we'd seen, what I'd felt. I couldn't explain it, either. How something so wrong could still feel so familiar. It was Reyes who finally spoke up. "You think we've seen the last of them?" I didn't answer immediately. My mind was racing, piecing together fragments. The song, the pull, the whispers that had started in my skull and then became louder, demanding, coaxing, tempting. The grave mind hadn't stopped, either. It was inside me, twisting with every thought, responding to the echoes of that alien melody. It wanted something, wanted to know. "It's not over," I said quietly, my voice carrying more certainty than I felt. "They're not done with us." The days that followed were spent chasing shadows. We tried to gather intel, scour the communications array, rebuild the mission logs, but nothing stuck. Every time we thought we were close to understanding, we were led to a dead end. The more we dug, the deeper the hole seemed to get. It was like the truth itself was trying to bury itself in the dirt, pulling away from us just as we reached it. But something else was happening. I started seeing things. Hallucinations, maybe, or memories that didn't belong to me. There were flashes, quick images, the glow of the choir's eyes, the haunting faces of people I didn't recognize. But the thing that stuck with me the most? The feeling. It was always there, just beneath the surface, gnawing at me like a parasite. I couldn't shake it. One night, I stood alone in the med bay, staring at the reflection of myself in the glass. My arm twitched. My mind felt like it was unraveling. I wasn't sure if I was losing myself to the grave mind or if something else was pulling me apart. "Elias?" A voice came from behind me. Rika. Her presence was like a rope thrown in the dark, pulling me back to reality. "Yeah," I answered, not taking my eyes off the mirror. "Are you all right?" The question was simple enough, but the way she asked it made my stomach twist. "I'm fine," I said, but it was a lie, one that even I didn't believe. She didn't push me further. Instead, she just stood there, her expression unreadable. I was about to turn and leave, but then I caught her eyes again. There was something in them, something heavy, something that wasn't there before. "I've been hearing things," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "In my head. It's the song, isn't it?" I felt the room grow colder. "I'm not sure what it is," I admitted, "but I've been hearing it too." We didn't speak much after that. We couldn't. We didn't have the words. But something was happening to all of us. The gravitas of what we'd faced on that colony planet was starting to sink in. We weren't just up against an enemy who wanted to destroy us. We were up against something that wanted to become us. Something that wanted to invade our minds, our bodies, our very souls. The grave mind wasn't the only thing at war with me anymore. The next morning, Reyes called us together again. She had news. "New intel came through," she said, staring down at the holographic map. "We've tracked down another signal. This one's coming from inside the Oort cloud. It's faint, but it's there. Same frequency, same pattern." "The choir?" I asked, not really expecting an answer. She didn't flinch. "We think so." I could feel the dread settle in my stomach like a rock. "You know what that means, right?" Rika's voice was tight, like she was trying to hold on to control. "We go after them again. We're walking right into the trap." Reyes didn't sugarcoat it. "We don't have a choice. If the choir's back, it means they're working towards something. And whatever it is, it's bigger than us. Bigger than anything we've seen before." The mission was set. There were no more questions, no more deliberations. The team was already suited up, loading into the dropships, ready to launch into the cold, black void that seemed to stretch forever. And yet, as I stood there in the hangar, a part of me wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to face them again, not after what I'd felt, what I heard. The echoes of the fallen, the whispers that slithered into my mind every time I closed my eyes. The Zarn, I could fight. The Leviathan, I could fight. But the choir? They didn't fight. They invited. They tempted. They became. And I wasn't sure if I could stop them. The trip to the Oort cloud was long. We were flying blind, moving into the deepest, darkest corners of our solar system, where even the stars seemed to be afraid to look. We dropped out of FDL travel and found ourselves surrounded by nothing. Nothing but the haunting, empty space between worlds. But then, the signal came again, stronger, louder, the song, filling every corner of the ship, a hum deep inside our skulls. It wasn't just calling anymore. It was growing. The moment we arrived, everything changed. A massive structure loomed ahead, hidden behind the veil of ice and dust that made up the Oort cloud. It looked like nothing I'd ever seen before. It wasn't a ship, not exactly. It was alive, tendrils of metal and flesh wrapped together in a twisted mockery of a starship, pulsating, vibrating, thrumming like a beating heart. And there, on the hull, was a single symbol, a symbol I recognized, a symbol I knew. It was the grave mind. Only this time, it wasn't in me. It was them. We made the jump. We boarded the creature's surface, moving through the tangled, organic mass like ants in a maze. The song was louder now, impossible to ignore, impossible to escape. I could hear it in my chest, in my bones. It was taking root, pulling us down into the dark like a spider weaving its web. And as we reached the center, where the heart of the structure beat like a drum, the truth hit me. We weren't here to stop the choir. We were here to become part of it. When you stand on the edge of the abyss, there's a moment where you realize the abyss is looking right back at you. And then you wonder if you've been staring into it for far longer than you care to admit. The silence was louder than the song, and I wasn't ready for either. We stood at the heart of the structure, the thing the choir had built, or become, or perhaps both. I didn't know anymore. The walls pulsed with life, moving like the lungs of something ancient, breathing. The whole place felt like it had been designed to consume, to devour, to grow. It breathed us in. And yet, it wasn't the walls or the structures that made me feel like we were being hunted. It was the song. The hum had reached a new pitch. It wasn't just inside my head now. It was inside my soul. It wrapped around my thoughts, clinging like a second skin, pressing in, suffocating, pulling at every thread of my identity. The grave mind stirred inside me, fighting against it, but the song was everywhere. I felt it, deep in my bones, thrumming with a rhythm I couldn't escape. "They're waiting," the grave mind whispered, its voice low, strained. "They're pulling you in." And for a moment, I wondered if it was right. What if that was what I wanted? To be part of it, to end this fight once and for all, to stop feeling like a pawn, a soldier who was always running, always fighting, always surviving, never living. What if the choir offered something I didn't know I needed? The thought was terrifying, but it wasn't just mine. Rika's voice cut through the noise, the static in my head. "Elias, this is wrong. We've been here too long. We can't let it take us." I looked at her, her face pale, eyes wide. She looked like a ghost of the woman I'd fought beside. She was feeling it too, the pull, the desire to listen. But I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't tell her that I didn't know if I could fight it anymore. The rest of the team was scattered behind us, all of them moving in slow motion, like they were in a trance. I could see it on their faces. Some of them were fighting it, some weren't. Their eyes glazed over, vacant, like they were waiting for something to come, something inevitable. And then I saw it, the choir, not the ones we'd seen before. These were different, not just human shapes. These were something else entirely. They were larger. Their forms weren't just skeletal or fluid. They were woven into the very fabric of the place. Tendrils of what could only be described as flesh and metal hung from their limbs, twisting, connecting them to the walls, to the floors, to the very atmosphere of this forsaken ship. Their faces, those faces, there was nothing human about them anymore. They were blank. No expression, no emotion, just hollow, endless eyes staring back at us. And still, I couldn't turn away. One of them, taller than the others, stepped forward, moving toward me with a fluid grace that made my heart race. It was the leader, I realized, the one who spoke to us before, the one whose voice had been inside my head, like a whispering thread pulling me into the dark. The voice came again, but this time, It wasn't just in my head. It echoed. You have heard the song. You have felt the pull. The voice was deep, layered, as if countless voices spoke in unison. Why fight it, Elias? Why struggle against what you know is inevitable? I could hear the others around me, their breath, the small sounds of them shifting, uncertain, afraid. But I didn't hear their words. Not over the song, not over that call. Join us, it said, the words lingering in the air like smoke. Become one with the song. Become one with us. I wanted to move, to fight, but my body, my mind, was locked. I felt my hand tremble. I wanted to say something, to shout, but the words wouldn't come. I felt the pull again, stronger. The song wasn't just in me anymore. It was around me, inside me. It was everything. The grave mind surged in my chest, fighting it. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was something else, something primal. But the choir's call was stronger. The more I resisted, the more they reached into my thoughts, into my past, into everything that had ever hurt, ever broken me. I saw my mother's face. I saw the streets of my homeworld, the memories of a life that felt so long ago. I remembered the fear, the loneliness, the loss that I had buried so deep inside me. And then I saw Rika's face. Her eyes, clear, focused, desperate. I heard her voice, cutting through the fog in my mind. Elias, fight it. We are not them. We are not like them. You have to remember who you are. But the song was louder than her voice. The song was us. I wanted to scream, but it was a scream swallowed by the emptiness, the cold, the overwhelming need to be part of this. And then I felt it, the binding. It wasn't a choice. Not anymore. I could feel the link forming, the first thread of connection, a tether between me and the choir, the grave mind fighting it, but too weak to stop it. It was too late. But just as it felt like the last thread of my soul was about to snap, I heard a noise, a crackle, a rupture, a shot. Rika fired. The bullet hit the choir leader, but the damage wasn't physical. It didn't pierce the skin. It didn't destroy the creature, but it shattered the link. It severed the thread between me and them. I snapped back to myself. I gasped. The song faded, its pull receding like a wave pulling back from the shore. I shook my head, but the dizziness lingered. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, my breath ragged. The grave mind's presence inside me was no longer overwhelming. It whispered, but it wasn't a command. It wasn't a demand. It was lost, too. For the first time in days, I was free. But the battle wasn't over. The choir's eyes burned with an unholy fire, the song now filled with fury. They didn't speak, not with words, but with intent. The air grew thick, heavy with the pressure of something ancient, something desperate. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for everything. We were no longer just fighting for our lives. We were fighting for our very humanity. Rika shouted, her voice cutting through the storm that was now building around us. Elias, we need to move now. But I couldn't look away. Not yet. We are you, the choir whispered, the voices all around me now, filling my mind with their final plea. No, I said, the word feeling heavy on my tongue. We are not you. I drew my weapon. I fired. The fight didn't last long, but it didn't need to. We didn't just fight to survive. We fought to remind them of something they had forgotten, that we were more than just a song. We were human. Victory is an illusion. The hardest battles are fought long after the last shot is fired. And sometimes, the greatest cost is the silence that follows the storm. It was over. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The choir was gone. We had destroyed their main structure. We had severed the connection between them and the ship they had become. The hum, the whispers, they stopped. The air was quiet, still for the first time in days, maybe longer. No more voices in my head. No more haunting melodies in my ears. We had won, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something vital, was missing. The ship was in ruins, or rather, what was left of it. Blackened walls, melted conduits, the distant hum of broken systems that refused to die. We stood in the center of it all, the quiet after the chaos like a suffocating fog. The floor beneath us was scorched, the walls still trembling from the force of the last blast. I looked around at the others, the team who had fought beside me. They weren't looking at me. They weren't looking at anything. Their eyes were distant, lost in the aftermath. And for a moment, I couldn't tell if they had truly survived. We did it, Rika said, her voice flat, emotionless, as if the words meant nothing at all. She stood a few paces away, arms crossed, staring at the remains of the choir structure. There were no tears, no smiles, just the weight of exhaustion. I could feel the burden in her voice, too. The truth of it, we had won, but at what cost? It was Reyes who broke the silence first. We need to get out of here. There was no argument. The others nodded, mechanically, as if they had all been following the same unspoken command. We were done. We were leaving. But as we moved toward the exit, my mind kept drifting back to the song. The others had been affected too, in ways I couldn't explain. Some of them were quieter now, less alive, like the battle had stolen something from them. The eerie calm between us wasn't just the result of victory. It was something else, something deeper, something final. I'd never truly understood what it meant to fight until I saw the choir's eyes. It wasn't the way they fought. It wasn't even the way they sang. It was the way they belonged, to each other, to the song, to something older than humanity, older than anything we'd known. And it was that connection that made them so dangerous, because it wasn't just about survival. We made it back to the ship. The Harrow's wake was waiting for us in orbit. It felt like a refuge, a place of safety, but I didn't feel safe. Not anymore. Not with the weight of what we'd left behind, what we'd taken with us. There were no celebrations when we boarded, no cheers, just the slow, methodical sounds of our boots on metal floors. No one spoke. No one needed to. We were all thinking the same thing. What did we just do? Rika had already disappeared into the command center by the time I reached the ship's bridge. Reyes was there too, standing in front of the holomap, staring at the stars like she could see something we couldn't. I wasn't sure if I wanted to speak to her. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear the truth, but I had to. Reyes, I said, my voice rough. What's next? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to me, her face pale in the soft glow of the map. She had the look of someone who had seen too much, felt too much. The fleet will be waiting for us in a few days, she said. They'll want to know the details, the real details. I stared at her, still not fully grasping what she meant. They won't like what we tell them, she added softly. They won't understand. There it was. The truth, plain and simple. We hadn't just defeated the choir. We joined them. It wasn't something anyone could articulate at first. Not fully. Not in any way that made sense. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood. We were infected, in a way that wasn't physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual. We had been exposed to something that went beyond biology, beyond technology. The choir wasn't just a species. It wasn't just a collective. It was a philosophy, a belief, a way of being. And now, we carried a part of it with us. The ship hummed in the quiet darkness. We were floating in the blackness of space, surrounded by stars we would never see again. But it wasn't the silence that haunted me. It was the fact that, in some twisted way, I had felt that silence. I had been a part of it. For a while, I had almost wanted to be a part of it. I could feel it in the back of my mind. Still, the song, not in the same way it had been before, loud and consuming, but it was there, a pulse, a hum, like a distant memory, fading in and out. I wasn't sure if I should be afraid, or if I should embrace it. I found Rika in the cargo bay, sitting by herself on the floor. Her weapon was beside her, discarded like it no longer mattered. She wasn't looking at anything. Her eyes were glassy, like she was staring into something only she could see. Rika, I said softly, crouching beside her. She didn't look at me. I thought we'd be done after this. Thought I could walk away from it all. You and me both, I replied quietly. She sighed, her breath shaky. But we can't, can we? We're not the same as we were when we boarded that ship. We've changed. I can feel it. I didn't respond at first. I didn't have to. We both knew. We could feel it in our bones, in the air around us. The weight of it was suffocating. We won, I said finally. But we didn't defeat it. We just survived it. The silence between us stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just the way things were now. We had walked into that place thinking we could stop the choir, but we didn't. We had only become a part of it. It had found us, twisted us, and we were no longer the same people who had arrived. It had taken something from us, something I wasn't sure we could get back. We made our way to the command center as the ship began its slow journey back to Earth. The stars outside, once so beautiful and distant, felt cold now, empty. I couldn't help but wonder if, even now, the song was waiting for us, whether it was calling us back, or maybe, it had already begun to call out to the rest of humanity. I had no answers. I wasn't even sure I wanted them. The fleet waited for us, just as Reyes had predicted. But when we arrived, there was no grand reception, no congratulations, no hero's welcome, just silence. And the questions. Report, the fleet commander said, his voice low, measured. The man didn't even look at us directly. He looked past us, as if he already knew the truth, but was waiting for us to speak it. I swallowed hard. I could feel the weight of his eyes on me. I could feel the weight of my own. They were never just a threat, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. They were a message, a warning. The choir isn't gone. Rika stepped up beside me. Her voice was steady. We are their legacy now, and we are the only ones who can stop them. The commander didn't say a word. He just stared. We left the briefing room an hour later. The feeling in the air was heavy. There was no celebration. There was no victory. Only silence, the kind that holds you hostage. And in that silence, the song continued. Not loud, not overwhelming, but it was there, and it was waiting. Sometimes, it isn't the battles you fight that define you. It's the ones you choose not to fight, and the quiet moments that follow the chaos. Those are the ones that leave a scar. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere between the silence of space and the whispers in my head, I started to believe it. We were no longer just soldiers, survivors, or even people. We were vessels. The briefing room had been empty for hours. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Answers, absolution, maybe something in between. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't going to find what I was looking for. There were no neat resolutions, no clean endings. Not here, not with this. The commander's words kept replaying in my head. The choir is waiting. The question is, what will you do about it? The answer felt like a weight I couldn't shake. There was no fighting it. Not anymore. We had heard the call. We had answered it. The choir had already wrapped itself around us, deep beneath our skin, in our very bones. It wasn't just something we could destroy. It wasn't something we could outrun. The choir wasn't an enemy. It was a truth, and the only thing left to do was decide how we would live with it. I wandered through the ship, passing empty halls and dimmed lights, my mind still reeling from everything we'd seen. I could hear footsteps echoing behind me, the soft tapping of boots on the metallic floor.